A 20-year-old student, full of dreams and plans for the future, set out for home in her car after a busy day at university. However, she never made it home, as if she had vanished into thin air. From the beginning, the investigation was extremely challenging. There were no obvious leads, and at the scene of the suspected disappearance, there were no traces that could aid the police. Over time, it became clear that solving this mystery was much simpler than they had initially thought. But it needed to be examined from the right perspective to uncover the truth hidden in details they originally considered insignificant. Cara Knott was born on February 11, 1966, in California. Her childhood was spent in the cozy suburb of El Cajon, San Diego, where she grew up in a loving and close-knit family. Cara was one of 4 children, and from a young age, she was surrounded by the care and attention of her parents, who aimed to create a warm and supportive environment for all their children. El Cajon, with its green parks, quiet streets, and friendly neighbors, was an ideal place for childhood. Cara loved spending time outdoors, often playing with her siblings in the yard or at local parks. Surrounded by nature and close to the ocean, Cara showed an interest in an active lifestyle from an early age and enjoyed spending time at the beach or in the mountains. Cara's parents, being caring and attentive people, placed great emphasis on raising their children with values such as kindness, respect for others, and a love for learning. Cara was an enthusiastic and curious child who enjoyed learning and immersed herself in school subjects. She was also passionate about creativity, loved drawing, and dreamed of a future full of interesting events and achievements. Family played a huge role in Cara's life, and she always felt the support and love of her loved ones. They celebrated holidays together, traveled, and spent a lot of time with one another, which created strong family bonds that made Cara feel safe and confident. Cara was a bright and cheerful girl who easily got along with those around her. Her kindness and openness attracted many friends with whom she shared her childhood joys and interests. She was an active participant in school life, showed interest in community events, and always sought to help others. Cara Knott's college years were full of energy, vibrancy, and ambition. She enrolled at San Diego State University, where she chose to focus on television and journalism. This field attracted her with its opportunity to explore the world, tell stories, and influence public opinion. Cara was deeply passionate about her studies and aspired to achieve success in her chosen profession. At university, Cara demonstrated herself to be a determined and responsible student. She immersed herself fully in her studies, actively participating in lectures and seminars, showing interest in every new topic. Her professors and classmates noted her serious approach to learning and her genuine desire to acquire new knowledge. Cara was not afraid to ask questions, always striving to understand complex subjects and ready to help her peers if they faced difficulties. In addition to her academic work, Cara was actively involved in campus life. She was a member of several student organizations related to media and journalism. Here, she found many like-minded individuals with whom she shared her ideas and discussed the latest news and trends in television. Cara was also engaged in volunteer work, reflecting her desire not only to learn, but also to contribute to society by helping those in need. Her interest in journalism extended beyond academics. Cara sought practical experience and frequently worked on various media projects. She participated in creating student news programs, wrote articles for the university newspaper, and dreamed of one day becoming a host of a major TV show or a reporter for an important news channel. College years were also a time for personal growth and new friendships. Cara made many friends, spending time with them both in and out of class. She was sociable, easily getting along with people, and respected among her peers. During this period, she was also dating a young man with whom her relationship was important and provided support during challenging times. Despite her busy schedule with studies and extracurricular activities, Cara always found time for her loved ones. For her 20th birthday, she received a long-awaited gift from her father, a pristine 1968 Volkswagen Juke, which she had dreamed of for a long time. In her spare time, she worked part-time at a local zoo, directing her earnings towards helping injured animals, reflecting her caring nature and love for nature. Additionally, Cara worked at a small health food store where she also aimed to make the world better through her work. Her life was going wonderfully, and the future seemed full of bright prospects and happiness. During the New Year holidays, Cara spent a lot of time with friends and family and frequently visited her boyfriend Wayne, who lived 50 kilometers away in the small town of Escondido. On the morning of December 27, 1986, Cara Knott decided to spend the day with her boyfriend, who was feeling unwell and needed her care. Attentive and caring, she set out to be with him early in the day, planning to stay by his side and offer support. Cara stayed with him until late in the evening, and around 8 p.m., she called her father to let him know she was about to head home. The drive home usually took about an hour, and Cara expected to return to her family while it was still relatively light outside. However, time passed and night gradually took hold, but Cara did not come home. Her absence began to cause increasing concern for her father. As the time approached midnight with no word from Cara, his anxiety turned into fear for his daughter. Initially, Cara's father decided to call her boyfriend, thinking that Cara might have stayed longer than planned. However, her boyfriend assured him that Cara had left almost immediately after the phone call. Hours passed, and the parents' worry intensified. They realized that they could no longer wait and decided to go out in search of their daughter. The route from Escondido to El Cajon had two possible roads, so the parents decided to split up to cover both directions. Soon, Cara's older sisters and brother joined the search, combining their efforts in the hope of finding any trace of the young woman. Throughout the night, they tirelessly scoured the roads Cara might have traveled, peering into the darkness for her car. Understanding that every minute could be crucial, Cara's father decided to contact the police. However, the police refused to take a report, explaining that since Cara was 20 years old, they would need to wait 24 hours from her disappearance before officially starting a search. Despite this, the family did not give up and continued their own search. They combed every turn and every road, hoping to find Cara. But sadly, by morning their efforts led to a troubling discovery that would change their lives forever. One of Cara's sisters and her husband decided to change their search strategy. Realizing that the main roads had been thoroughly checked, they decided to veer off the highway onto a less obvious route running parallel to the main road. As they drove along the rural road, they noticed a parked car in the distance that immediately caught their attention. Upon approaching, they were heartbroken to recognize the white Volkswagen that belonged to Cara. As they got closer, their anxiety only increased. The car doors were wide open and the windows were fully rolled down. Inside the vehicle, they saw Cara's handbag lying on the seat, and the keys were in the ignition, as if Cara had been preparing to leave. However, there was no sign of her anywhere nearby. This eerie scene instantly conveyed to them that something terrible had happened. When the police arrived at the scene, they decided to immediately search the surrounding area. They descended into the canyon beneath the bridge where, among the bushes and rocks, they discovered Cara's body. Her body had been thrown from the bridge and lay at the bottom of the canyon. This was a shocking and tragic moment for everyone involved in the search. Cara's relatives, who were nearby, were the first to identify her. Despite all their efforts and hopes of finding her alive, the reality proved to be far more cruel and tragic. Their hopes were instantly shattered as they were confronted with the horrifying scene. The police immediately cordoned off the area, and an official investigation began. The discovery of Cara Knott's body marked the start of one of the most high-profile criminal cases in California. The investigation into Cara Knott's case began right after her body was found under the bridge off the I-15 highway. From the outset, the case was extremely complex, as the crime scene did not provide significant evidence for the investigators. However, despite these challenges, police and detectives worked tirelessly to establish the circumstances of the tragedy and find the perpetrator. Initially, the police focused on reconstructing the timeline of the evening when Cara disappeared. They determined that Cara had left her boyfriend's house in Escondido around 8:30 p.m. and was heading home to El Cajon. A receipt found in her car confirmed that she had stopped at a gas station, which verified her route and timing. However, it remained unclear what could have caused her to deviate from the highway onto an abandoned bridge where her body was eventually found. The location where Cara's body was discovered seemed mysterious. Investigators found no obvious evidence, such as signs of a struggle, fingerprints, or DNA, that could directly point to a suspect. The only notable evidence was tire tracks on the bridge that did not match the wheels of her Volkswagen. These tracks indicated the presence of another vehicle at the crime scene, which immediately became one of the key leads in the investigation. Alongside the crime scene examination, detectives began questioning people who might have seen Cara that night, as well as those who had been driving on the I-15 highway near the bridge. However, in the initial days, no significant information was obtained, and the case began to turn into a puzzle. The first person to come under suspicion was her boyfriend, Wayne. He was the last person known to have seen Cara that evening, which immediately drew the investigators' attention. However, Wayne insisted that after she left, he stayed at home until late at night. When he was informed that Cara had not returned home and her family had begun an active search, Wayne also decided to join the search efforts. His sister confirmed his account, stating that he had indeed left the house only late at night. The police, in turn, believed that Cara's murder occurred between 9 and 10 p.m., and since Wayne's alibi was confirmed, and there were no direct clues linking him to the crime, investigators began considering other theories. Attention soon shifted to the next suspect, Wayne's father. Wayne's father was the owner of a small health food store where Cara worked part-time. Although there was no direct evidence against him, the police noted several suspicious details. Firstly, at Cara's funeral, he exhibited excessive emotion, which seemed unusual for someone who was not a close relative. His profound grief appeared somewhat inappropriate, raising concerns among investigators. Secondly, the man had a reputation for flirting with young women, which had caused some people to distrust him. This information led the police to scrutinize him more closely. Then, a new lead emerged from a witness. The police received a report that a golden Cadillac with a blonde woman in the front seat had been seen near the location where Cara's body was found. Wayne's father owned such a car, which intensified suspicions against him. The police decided to interrogate the man. However, he vehemently denied any involvement in Cara's murder. To prove his innocence, he provided phone records showing that at the time of Cara's presumed death, he was at a location more than an hour's drive away from the crime scene. These pieces of evidence forced the police to reconsider their suspicions and search for other leads, although questions about his behavior and the strange coincidences remained. These pieces of evidence were sufficient to clear Wayne's father of suspicion. However, the lack of other suspects left the investigation at an impasse, and detectives decided to seek public assistance. The tragic death of Cara Knott began to receive widespread media coverage. Television, radio, and print media actively disseminated information about the incident. The police called on citizens to report any suspicious or unusual occurrences they might have noticed on the day of the murder. Soon, a local television station, in collaboration with the police department, launched a special program dedicated to road safety. The program discussed potential dangers on highways and provided advice on how to act in critical situations. The goal of the broadcast was not only to raise awareness, but also to potentially gather more information about Cara's case. The effect was immediate. After the program aired, the police received about 300 calls from citizens reporting various oddities and possible leads related to the case. However, detectives soon noticed one important detail. Many of the reports were similar. Several dozen women described similar encounters where they were stopped by the same patrol officer, Craig Pyer, on the same stretch of highway where Cara's body was found. Craig Payer's behavior raised increasing concerns among investigators. The women he had interacted with described his actions as highly disturbing. Some recounted that after being stopped, Payer would engage in personal conversations that gradually shifted to intimate and even explicitly inappropriate topics. These conversations could drag on for tens of minutes, sometimes even a couple of hours. In some instances, he would even sit in the passenger seat continuing the conversation. Notably, these incidents occurred exclusively when the women were driving alone. Payer seemed to target those who were unaccompanied, which was troubling. The most alarming discovery awaited the detectives ahead. Several women reported that Payer had suggested they turn off the main highway onto the very road where Cara's car was later found. This coincidence became a serious cause for suspicion. Additionally, some women mentioned that Payer had engaged in inappropriate behavior. During these interactions, he would touch them, stroking their hair or shoulders, showing excessive and unwanted attention. Such actions caused fear and discomfort among the women, but being alone with the officer made them feel vulnerable and unsure of how to react. These testimonies confirmed that Payer was clearly exceeding his official duties, and his behavior was not just strange, but downright frightening. All of this together painted a grim picture that increasingly linked him to what happened to Cara Knott. At first glance, Craig Payer's biography seemed almost perfect. A Vietnam War veteran, 38 years old at the time, he had served in the patrol division for 13 years and was held in high regard by his colleagues. Married with 2 children, he appeared to be the epitome of a model citizen and a responsible officer. His colleagues described him as a professional who consistently achieved high results and often served as a role model for others. However, when detectives began to delve into his past, troubling signs began to emerge. It turned out that Payer had received multiple complaints from women he had stopped on the road without apparent reason and behaved inappropriately towards them. These women described instances where Payer asked personal questions beyond his authority and acted in a harassing manner. Despite these complaints, no serious action had been taken by his superiors. Payer's reputation as a model officer played a role. The management considered the allegations unfounded and believed his actions did not cross the line of acceptability. These complaints went unnoticed until the investigation into Cara Knott's case brought Payer into a new light. The stark contrast between the outward image of a respectable officer and his hidden actions revealed a disturbing truth. Behind the facade of a devoted family man and respected professional was a person capable of abusing his power, leading to tragic consequences. Investigators also noticed another odd detail. Payer had participated in the road safety program that aired a few days after Cara Knott's tragic death. During the program, reporters accompanied him in his patrol car, asking questions and conducting interviews. In the video footage from the filming, fresh scratches were visible on his face. According to regulations, Payer was required to document the source of these injuries in his end-of-shift report, and this detail aroused the detectives' suspicions. It turned out that the scratches on his face appeared on the very day Cara Knott was killed. In his report, Payer provided a rather unusual explanation for the injuries. He claimed that he had gone to the police station to refuel his car, but accidentally spilled gasoline, slipped on the spilled fuel, and fell face-first onto a barbed wire fence. This explanation seemed highly unconvincing and drew the investigators' attention, especially considering the coincidence between the timing of the scratches and the date of the murder. The fresh wounds on his face, which he could not credibly explain, only heightened the suspicions against him. Now, the investigation had another lead that could potentially link Payer to that fateful evening when Cara Knott's life was cut short. Next, detectives focused on Payer's duty log, which he was required to complete each time he stopped a driver, including the exact time and location. When they examined the log for December 27th, they noticed something suspicious. One entry had clearly been erased and rewritten. The entry recorded a stop at 9:30 p.m., around the time when they believed Cara Knott was killed. This looked like an attempt by Payer to create an alibi and divert suspicion from himself. Further scrutiny of the log revealed another crucial detail. The original entry in that spot indicated a time of 10:30 p.m. This alteration in the time cast serious doubt among the investigators, as it could indicate an attempt to conceal his actual location at the time of the murder. With these new suspicions, detectives decided to conduct a thorough examination of Pyre's patrol car. First, they found that the tire size on his vehicle perfectly matched the tire tracks found on the abandoned bridge where Cara's body was discovered. This further strengthened their suspicions. Second, in the trunk of Pyre's patrol car, under the spare tire, they found a piece of rope. This important item was sent to experts for analysis. After carefully comparing the marks on Cara's neck with the structure of the found rope, experts concluded that this rope could have been used as the murder weapon. These pieces of evidence became crucial to the case, linking Pyre to the crime scene and confirming his involvement in Cara Knott's death. With enough evidence and suspicious circumstances gathered, detectives decided to interrogate Craig Pyre. During the interrogation, Pyre vehemently denied any involvement in the murder. He claimed that at the time of the tragedy, he was on another stretch of road, several kilometers away from the crime scene, where he said he was issuing a ticket to another driver. To prove his innocence, Pyre even voluntarily handed over the uniform he wore that night. In those years, DNA analysis capabilities were extremely limited, and investigators did not have a DNA sample of the killer. However, they decided to thoroughly examine Pyre's uniform, hoping to find something useful. Their efforts did not go in vain. Tiny particles of golden fabric were found on Cara's clothing. These particles caught the experts' attention because they matched the color of the patches on Pyre's uniform. Fabric samples from his uniform were sent to the lab for analysis. The results confirmed that the particles found on Cara's clothing were a perfect match for the material of the patches on Pyre's uniform. But that was not all. During a further examination of Pyre's uniform and shoes, detectives stumbled upon a very important piece of evidence. Microscopic particles of purple fabric were found on his uniform and boots. These particles matched the material of the pants Cara was wearing on the night of her murder. Upon closer inspection of Cara's clothing, experts discovered a small drop of blood on her boots. Although DNA testing was not possible at that time, it was established that the blood belonged to the rare O-negative blood type. Cara had a different blood type, but O-negative was Craig Pyre's blood type. Detectives hypothesized that the blood might have gotten on Cara's boot during a struggle when she possibly scratched the attacker's face. This hypothesis was supported by further investigations. Using data from Pyre's duty log, investigators were able to locate the driver, whom Pyre claimed to have ticketed at the same time Cara was supposedly killed. The man stated that the officer did stop him, but it happened around 10:30 p.m., not 9:30 p.m., as indicated in the log. Moreover, he noted that Pyre repeatedly corrected the time on the document in his presence, which seemed highly suspicious. As detectives continued to analyze these crucial pieces of evidence, new witness statements began to come in that could shed light on Pyre's behavior and actions that evening. These testimonies heightened the investigators' suspicions and helped them piece together a more accurate account of the events, bringing them closer to solving the tragic crime. One witness reported seeing Cara at a gas station just a few miles from where her body was later found. According to the witness, she turned off the main highway onto a dirt road, and soon after, a patrol car followed her. This sighting became an important lead in the investigation. When Pyre's colleagues learned that he was a suspect in the case, they began sharing their own observations with detectives. Many of them noted that Pyre showed an unusual interest in the investigation. He frequently asked colleagues if there were any new details or updates on the case. This behavior struck his colleagues as suspicious, especially given his previous reticence in similar situations. Additionally, Pyre often suggested that it might not be fair to blame the killer, as the incident could have been an accident. These comments made his colleagues uneasy, especially in light of the mounting suspicions. However, the most alarming account came from a young colleague who had recently joined the force. She described how Pyre discussed the case with her, expressing the opinion that it could have all been an accident. and asked strange, seemingly inappropriate questions about her perception of the case. Her account heightened the detective's suspicions, adding new elements that increasingly pointed to Payer's potential involvement in the tragedy. Another colleague shared a chilling story. Long before Cara's murder, Payer had taken her to the very bridge where Cara's body was later found and grimly remarked that it was an ideal place to dispose of a body. This statement intensified the suspicions and became a key element in the investigation. Detectives also spoke with the duty officer who was on shift at the station on the day of Cara's murder. He reported that when Payer arrived at the station, supposedly to refuel his vehicle, he already had fresh scratches on his face. This contradicted Payer's claim that he got the injuries from falling on a barbed wire fence. Payer's colleagues also contested his explanation, asserting that such an incident was unlikely. The parking spot for Payer was just 3 meters away from the fence, and more importantly, the barbed wire was stretched significantly above his height. Although all these pieces of evidence were circumstantial, their cumulative effect painted a compelling picture of Payer's involvement in the murder. Given the gathered testimony and evidence, detectives decided to arrest Craig Payer on January 17, 1987. Recognizing that the case required immediate and decisive action, Payer continued to assert his innocence, and the case was ultimately brought to trial. His defense attorney argued that all the presented evidence was purely circumstantial and could not serve as the basis for a conviction. The lawyer emphasized Payer's impeccable reputation, his long service in the police force, and his professional achievements. However, the prosecution viewed the case differently. The prosecutors argued that the collection of circumstantial evidence formed a solid chain of proof against Payer. They contended that Payer had deliberately falsified his duty log to conceal the true time of his absence from work during Cara's murder. Furthermore, they asserted that he had lied about how he received the scratches on his face on the night of her death. To top it off, nearly 30 women testified against him, reporting his inappropriate behavior during traffic stops. The prosecution also emphasized that actions such as altering documents and providing false statements indicated an attempt to conceal the truth. The number of women who deemed his behavior unacceptable and strange suggested systematic abuse on his part. This significantly undermined the defense's attempts to portray Payer as an exemplary officer, ultimately presenting him before the court as someone capable of deliberate criminal behavior. Due to the lack of direct evidence, the trial became a true test. The jury could not reach a unanimous decision for an entire week, and eventually their votes were split. This situation forced the judge to declare a mistrial and schedule a new hearing. At the second trial, a new prosecutor was appointed who effectively dismantled the defense presented by Payer's attorney. During the trial, some of Payer's colleagues were called as witnesses. They claimed to have seen him fall on the fence, which was supposed to explain the scratches on his face. However, under persistent cross-examination by the prosecutor, they admitted that they had not actually witnessed the incident and were merely repeating a story told to them by Payer. This admission significantly undermined the credibility of the defense's testimony and heightened the suspicions against the defendant. In the new trial, the jury, considering all the presented evidence and testimony, found Payer guilty of the murder of Cara Knott. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. Since then, Payer has repeatedly attempted to appeal his conviction, but each appeal has been consistently denied. In 2004, an unexpected development occurred in Payer's case. He was given the opportunity to prove his innocence through DNA testing, which by then had become a standard procedure in criminal investigations. Experts could compare his DNA with the blood sample found on Cara Knott's shoes. This was a chance for Payer, who had consistently claimed his innocence, to definitively prove his non-involvement in the crime. However, to everyone's surprise, Payer declined the DNA test without providing any explanation. This refusal led many to a firm belief in his guilt. People began to understand that Payer was aware that the test results could unequivocally confirm his involvement in the murder and preferred to avoid such confirmation. Payer will be eligible to apply for parole again only in 2027, when he turns 77 years old. Cara Knott's family has made tremendous efforts to ensure that her death was not in vain. They actively campaigned for legislative changes and achieved the adoption of several important amendments. University scholarships were established in Cara's honor to keep her memory alive through the support of young people's education. Cara's father also sued the state of California for allowing someone who posed a danger to society to be employed in law enforcement. He won the case, and the family received a compensation of $2.7 million. With these funds, they continued their work in memorializing Cara. Additionally, Cara's father successfully advocated for the creation of a nature reserve on abandoned land near the location where his daughter died. The reserve was named in Cara's memory, becoming a symbol of the fight for justice and safety. Unfortunately, in 2000, Cara's father passed away from a heart attack while visiting the reserve dedicated to his daughter. If you have thoughts or questions about this tragic story, please leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.